Pittsburgh Steelers have made multiple moves ahead of their big game Sunday against the Miami Dolphins. Ahead of that game, not only have they made some moves, these moves have huge implications going forward as the Steelers approach a crucial stretch of play. But not only that, we have a ton of injury updates and even Mike Tomlin revealing the truth behind some of his controversial moves last week. Ton to go over on this episode, folks. You're going to want to stay tuned until the end of the video, but before we get into it all, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Steelers content, folks. A lot to go over today, and obviously the Steelers have been making a lot of moves as of late, a ton of different things moving around the chessboard, and some more moves have been made ahead of their game on Monday. So let's dive right into it. The Steelers have placed Calvin Anderson on the IR. Given that there's 4 games left in the regular season, he's done for the regular season. Team is signing Dylan Cook to the active roster. They also cut Trey Sermon from the practice squad and signed offensive tackle David Sharp to the practice squad. So, folks, this is interesting for a few different reasons. Now, obviously, initially, listen, Calvin Anderson, he is now done for the year. He obviously had it's an unfortunate way, of course, to end his season. But we're going to focus on the players they're adding, which is Dylan Cook. And you can see this here. There's a bunch of moves. We'll also dive into some of the other ones. But they have added offensive tackle Dylan Cook to the active roster, and they also signed David Sharp. Now, Cook was elevated for the Week 14 game against the Ravens, and we saw, if you watch my post-game video, he actually saw action in that game after Andrus Peat went down with an injury. All these guys. And he ultimately played a little bit, and we'll dive into it later. Tomlin was impressed. Now, he was signed initially to a reserve/future contract following last year. He spent 2023 on the 53-man roster, hadn't really gotten many games. I believe last game was his first ever NFL appearance, or at least first ever NFL game that he actually played in, and he actually looked fine. I mentioned that in the post-game video, and I also am kind of going to mention it now. He's pretty interesting, and he played college at Montana, 27 games, was a 2-time academic All-Big Sky selection, started 23 of the 27 games in Montana. So shout out to Dylan Cook. He's getting the call for the game this upcoming Monday. But not only that, they also, of course, got Sharp, and he was most recently, on the Chargers practice squad, was a 4th-round pick way back in 2017. Now, he's played 46 games across his career. So Sharp is somebody who, again, same position as Cook, but has the opportunity now to be a more veteran presence, but they liked what they saw out of Dylan Cook. We'll probably see Dylan Cook again. And there's some more insight here on on Sharp, if you want to feel free and read it. Played 46 games, started 6 games, played 46 across of about a half dozen teams over there. And then, of course, Anderson, we know it's an unfortunate way for him to end his year, but hopefully he can bounce back next year. So, all very interesting, moves at this point. Again, you're probably looking at this and saying, hey, do any of these actually have big implications going forward? The answer is yes. Obviously, Calvin Anderson, any injuries at this point to players, whether they're starters, whether they're special teams guys, whatever it is, they matter because it means you have to call up and kind of maintain that next man up mindset, that next man up mentality, because each game is a playoff game basically at this point for the Steelers, right? They control their own destiny, but so do the Ravens, and they play each other, of course, the last week of the year. So hopefully Dylan Cook can kind of maintain that and maintain what he did in his brief play last Sunday. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on that. And let's dive into some of the comments about a few different things. Now, I want to start with some updates on some injuries and things like that before we get into the Cam Heyward stuff. So you can see here, Mike Tomlin said that the Steelers were excited to see Dylan Cook play, and he loved his mindset when he went into the game. He may get another opportunity this week. We'll see where it leads us. And he will. That was, of course, from yesterday's practice. They didn't have any practice today, but they did ultimately decide to do that by, of course, activating him to the active roster. So Mike Tomlin giving some scoops there. And he was also asked about James Pierre's 6th-year breakout. It's him. Ask any of his teammates. He's tough-minded. The tough road is not something that's new to him. He played it up mentality. So it's James Pierre has obviously been fantastic. The big pick against Lamar Jackson last week. But again, going back to Dylan Cook, Tomlin loved what he saw out of him. And it's always a good sign when your 4th-string offensive tackle gets into the game and you hear his name once, of course, and you get obviously called, and then you don't hear his name from the announcers for the rest of the way. That means he's doing his job properly. Now, obviously, at this point, he's going to have to continue to sustain that. If he struggles now with teams that are maybe going to scout him out a little bit more, and the Dolphins, of course, ahead of next week, that's obviously something to keep an eye out on. But shout out to Dylan Cook. And also shout out to James Pierre for having a breakout year this year and kind of giving them an abundance of cornerbacks to be able to move Jalen Ramsey to safety, being able to cut Darius Slay to open up opportunities for guys like Asante Samuel, for guys like, of course, Joey Porter Jr., who's been really good this year. A lot of exciting things there. Some other news, though, kind of dive into, and ahead of the game last Sunday, one of the big storylines was Roman Wilson being not active and Scotty Miller and, of course, Calvin Austin being active ahead of them. It was simply because, A, they trust Calvin Austin more, but B, Scotty Miller was a capable backup punt returner. So that kind of answers the question on Scotty Miller over Roman Wilson. But I know a lot of fans out there were upset that, Roman Wilson didn't get to start last week because of the fact that people say he's a good blocker. He obviously has decent hands. Do you guys want to see Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson play against against the Dolphins on Monday? Because at the end of the day, they're probably going to rock with Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who's up now, Adam Thielen, the veteran guys. And they were speaking out on the broadcast last Sunday. Those guys just know how to run their routes better because they've been around longer. And MVS and Thielen, they're not going to misjudge Rodgers as much as guys like Roman Wilson and Austin. But it was a little bit unfair for Roman Wilson to be, inactive. But football isn't always fair, right? It's just the way it is. And speaking of kind of having to play that game Monday, Derek Harmon, we know, and I mentioned it in the video, he makes a huge difference against the run. They did an okay job against Derrick Henry, but obviously the first round pick, he's been out of it. Hopefully he can return here soon. It's going to be wild, and Derek Harmon will be limited to start the week, and they will let his participation and quality of that determine if he can play against the Dolphins. He says he's excited about the extra day of rest, and that's something that's going to be crucial for Aaron Rodgers, who's, of course, still dealing with his broken wrist, and, of course, now Derek Harmon, who their first-round pick, he needs to be able to play to go up against the Dolphins, who on paper is an easier matchup, but you never want to take that for granted, especially with Steelers football and the way that things have been going kind of on that front. And some of the other injuries ahead of practice or following practice yesterday, Keanu Banton, James Pierre, Ben Skronik, and Yaya Black are all banged up and will be limited to start the week. Tomlin also says that Kyle Duggar has a really good chance to return this week from that injury. So that is fantastic news, having Kyle Duggar back. Of course, we saw Chuck Clark play last week. Wasn't fantastic, but at the same time, it is what it is, right? You kind of just got to move on from it. They did their job, right? They did their job in the sense of they won the game. That's all you needed them to do. And as you now look ahead to the secondary, heading into the game on Monday, got to hope that and, of course, Adam Thielen and obviously Adam Thielen and others, of course, MVS, are going to have to get things going. And also got to hope that Darnell Washington, no real update on him. Hopefully he's going to be good to go. I'm sure we'll see as we approach the game on Monday. But you look at all the questionables. DK Metcalf, of course, went to the hospital. He should be good. Mike Tomlin said he should be available, which is great news. Now Calvin Anderson, Max Sharping, both done for the year. But Andrews, or at least Calvin Anderson is. But Andrews Pete, he's questionable. Darnell Washington's questionable. I'm curious to see what happens ahead of the game on Monday, because there's a lot of different storylines, whether that's Joey Porter Jr., who's been elite in his last 5 games, but that's kind of overshadowed sometimes by his poor penalties and poor gambles at times. Let me know down below your thoughts on all this, and a ton of news that we went over today, so let me know if you guys are enjoying that, but a ton of signings. Let me know down below your thoughts are. Thank you guys for watching. You guys are absolute peace. Cheers.